Number 11. Human skull. If you Google fisherman and human skull, a disturbing number of different stories will pop up. But this one is quite the coincidence. In 2007, British fisherman Barry Hunter caught one of the strangest and most shocking things ever. He was fishing in the North Sea when something extra tumbled out of his net with the other fish, a piece of human skull. Being a law-abiding citizen and a decent human being, he took the remains to the police, who, after some investigating, learned the bit of the skull belonged to someone named Brian Allison. When they told Barry the news, he couldn't believe it. This was actually his friend. Brian Allison, along with his brother Robert Temple, went missing in 2004 when their vessel sank off the northeast coast near Tynemouth. The boat's wreckage was found, but no trace of either man was ever discovered until 2007. In the net of Allison's friend, Barry Hunter. I'm not a mathematician, but the odds of that have to be astronomical. For an extra twist, the news of the identification reached Brian's mother on the day of what would have been Robert's 37th birthday. The strange circumstances of this story are almost hard to believe. Number 10. Cold War missile. One of the weirdest things caught in the ocean was pulled out of the water 14 miles off the coast of Washington. The thing was encrusted with barnacles and wrapped in seaweed. It also came from the Cold War. This thing looked like a missile, and it was discovered by Eric Ide, who had pulled it on board his trawler inside a fishing net. At first, he thought it was a bomb from World War II, but once he got the thing on board and took a better look at it, he found Cyrillic letters underneath the barnacles. Cyrillic is the Russian alphabet. As you can imagine, Eric was pretty alarmed. He phoned the US Coast Guard and they showed up in record time, sending a helicopter to fly over the location and see what was going on. After all, it's not every day someone catches a Russian missile in the ocean off the coast of Washington. It was actually the Navy who ordered Eric to take his trawler to Port Angeles immediately. There, the Navy took the device and told Eric it was some kind of communication machine from the Cold War, though they didn't really say what it had been used for exactly or why it looked an awful lot like a missile. Number 9. The Deep Chimera. During a research trip to the Mid-Atlantic Ridge way back in 2004, scientists caught a rather bizarre animal from the deepest part of the ocean. The creature is known as a deep-sea chimera, a type of weird fish closely related to sharks. The biggest difference is that the chimera and the shark branched off from the same evolutionary tree about 400 million years before today. The chimera is in fact a type of cartilaginous fish, meaning its body is made up of hard cartilage instead of bone. They live deep in the ocean at depths of up to 8,500 feet, which is why it's so rare for anyone to see one, never mind to catch one. It gets its name from the hybrid creature of Greek mythology that had the head and body of a lion, a goat on its back, and a tail that ended with the head of a snake. So maybe this fish isn't quite as creepy, but it's still weird. These fish can grow up to almost 5 feet in length, and there are quite a few different species. What really separates the chimera from the shark is its mouth. Instead of having jaws lined with sharp teeth, the chimera has 3 pairs of grinding tooth plates that it uses to pulverize its meals and rip them apart, almost like dull saw blades. Number 8. The real Loch Ness Monster? At Loch Ness in Scotland, monster hunting enthusiasts used a specialized marine drone to look through the deepest depths of the infamous loch to try to find the most elusive beast in all of nature. And, believe it or not, they really did find a monster. But according to ABC News, it wasn't the one they were looking for. While scanning through the murky darkness for any sign of Nessie, the research team caught sight of something that looked familiar. Upon closer inspection, they realized they had caught the Loch Ness Monster, only this one wasn't alive. It was a nearly 30-foot-long replica used in a film from the 1970s that was sunk in the loch 50 years ago. But what could this mean for the truth of the Loch Ness Monster? Are the sightings of the mystical beast really just based on some plastic prop at the bottom of the loch? Well, probably not, seeing as the prop had its inflatable humps removed before it sank. But still, it was quite the coincidence. The team also discovered a giant shipwreck on the bottom of the loch, but no slithering green monster. Number 7. A giant grouper. A teenage girl went fishing near Marco Island, off the coast of Florida. She was with her brother, her mother, and her stepfather. At only 16 years old, she wasn't expecting to hook any kind of extraordinary fish, yet she managed to reel in a monstrous Goliath grouper that weighed an estimated 583 pounds. To make this story even more incredible, it was only the girl's second time fishing. She told local news that the biggest fish she had caught previously was an ordinary salmon. This kid is obviously a natural when it comes to fishing. There are skilled fishermen out there who could barely grapple with a grouper of this size. And yet, she had the monster hooked and in the boat in just 15 minutes. The girl only weighed 115 pounds, about 5 times less than the fish. The sheer strength of her breaks every rule of physics. Perhaps, in the moment, she somehow gave herself superhuman powers to pull the grouper out of the water? Here's the second amazing thing about the catch. According to the International Game Fish Association, the heaviest Goliath grouper ever caught by a woman weighed only 366 pounds. And it was caught back in 1965. As for the overall world record, that was 680 pounds. So this 16-year-old came pretty close to breaking literally all the records. Number 6. A dead body. While trawling in the Arctic Ocean, a group of fishermen pulled up one thing nobody ever wants to have on their boat: a dead body. The ship was sailing slightly north of Norway when the crew made the grisly discovery. At first, they thought it was just a pile of old clothes in the back of the net. They realized they were wrong when the crewmen took a closer look and saw body parts inside the pieces of clothing. It was such a dramatic discovery that the crew had to head to the mainland for the corpse to be handed over to the police and identified. Here's where things get spooky. The place where the body was found is between the international waters of Norway and Russia, in a kind of gray zone. According to The Independent, people have been going missing in these remote waters in recent years, suggesting the body may have belonged to a murder victim. Then again, it could just be a fisherman who drank a bit too much and fell off his boat. Number 5. Attack of the Orcas. On the morning of March 16th, a whale-watching vessel caught something absolutely amazing and horrifying at the same time. The vessel was navigating through the Bremer Canyon system, a collection of marine trenches a few dozen miles from Bremer Bay, Australia. Those on board witnessed a group of orca whales working together to hunt and take down a blue whale. Something so rare that this is the first time such an event was ever caught on video. The blue whale was only a juvenile, about 50 feet long. Adults can usually grow to be at least 90 feet. The waters were filled to the brim with around 70 killer whales, each of them performing a specific job in the hunting ritual. They actually bullied the huge blue whale into a shallow part of the continental shelf, the way ancient humans used to drive antelope off cliffs. The attack went on for hours in full view of the luckiest whale watchers ever. Or unluckiest, depending on which way you see it. The orcas continued biting at the blue whale's face, keeping it exactly where they wanted. Eventually, there was a great bubble of red that burst on the surface like a balloon full of blood. Some flesh floated for a few seconds, then everything was gone. Scientists know that killer whales can hunt together, but an actual hunt like this has never before been fully documented, until now. And yeah, nature is frightening. Number 4. Mermaid in a net. Back in 2012, Animal Planet uploaded a video of what appeared to be a mermaid caught in a net. There were no details provided of where the fishing vessel was when it captured the alleged mermaid. Nobody knows where the footage came from, but it was obviously shocking. The video footage showed a group of fishermen pulling up a net, just like on any other ordinary day. But when they got close to the net, something inside it began to freak out. The men started screaming, the thing inside the net was flailing around, and then its hand burst through the holes of the net. And this was the real shocker, because the hand seemed to be webbed, like how you would imagine a mermaid's hand to look. The fishermen panicked and dropped the net back into the ocean, and the mermaid was never seen again. The video has never been officially confirmed by scientists, but it's still haunting the internet today as some of the best potential proof of the existence of mermaids. Number 3. Pregnant shark. Off the coast of Taiwan, fishermen caught a great white shark that measured over 12 feet in length. But that wasn't the only shocking thing about the great beast. It was also pregnant, found to be carrying 14 14 baby sharks. This is an incredibly rare thing to witness in the wild, as pregnant sharks are almost never caught. Plus, the shark was a variable giant. The fisherman who caught it sold the monstrous specimen for $2,000. And a researcher in ocean biodiversity who saw the shark said that in 20 years of marine ecology, it was the biggest great white they had ever seen in their life. As brutal and cruel as the catch was, seeing as the shark was pregnant, it gave researchers a unique chance to study the reproductive mode of the great white shark, something that hasn't really been done before. Inside her belly were 14 fully formed babies. The great white actually lays eggs, and then the babies grow inside of her, something unique in the animal kingdom. Number 2. Monster tuna. Off the coast of Texas, a fisherman broke state records after catching the biggest bluefin tuna ever. The monster fish weighed an outstanding 876 pounds and measured over 10 feet long. The battle for the fish began at roughly 9 o'clock in the morning. Right away, Troy Lancaster from Port Aransas realized he had something huge on the end of his line. He struggled with the fish until just after 6 p.m. It took over 8 hours to reel the bugger in, though the last hour was apparently the worst because the fish had already given up and stopped fighting back. For a full 60 minutes, Lancaster had to reel in the dead weight of the fish. After getting the huge tuna to shore, it was measured and confirmed by the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department to be the largest tuna ever captured in the state. The previous record was in 1985 with a fish that weighed 70 pounds less. This tuna was about 19 years old, and according to Newsweek, could be worth almost $3 million. Number 1. Flying spaghetti monster. The flying spaghetti monster was recently caught at a depth of 4,000 feet in the Atlantic Ocean, filmed by a remote control underwater vehicle. If you're not sure what the flying spaghetti monster is, it's the deity of a parody religion known as the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. The people who participate in the mock religion claim to believe in a giant flying spaghetti monster made up of, well, spaghetti and meatballs. Ramen. But nobody ever thought the creature really existed. Of course, this wasn't a deity, but what was the strange creature caught at the bottom of the ocean that looked like a mass of floating spaghetti? According to experts from the National Oceanography Center, it was a type of siphonophore, a creature kind of like a jellyfish made up of colonies of thousands of much smaller individual creatures. That's why it looks like a monster made out of spaghetti strands. It's rare to find one that looks this way, and even just rare to see them at all because they live so deep in the ocean. Number 10. Ancient sarcophagi. In Israel, while construction workers were working to build a new animal park at the Ramat Gan Safari Park, they discovered a pair of matching sarcophagi from about 1,800 years ago. What's really strange is that the sarcophagi were actually found 25 years before, and then covered up. Workers at the safari didn't know what to do with the creepy sarcophagi, so they just kind of put them out of the way and buried them under sand, and they were just simply forgotten. 25 years later, when the contractors began digging, they found the ancient coffin sticking out of the soil. Now they have finally been taken back for analysis by proper archaeological authorities. From what the experts have gathered so far, the coffins likely came from the 3rd century AD during the Roman period. And even though the coffins look pretty spooky, they didn't hold the bodies of any cursed mummies or anything like that. Instead, they were probably made for a couple, a husband and wife. How they ended up buried under a safari park almost 2,000 years ago is still a mystery. Number 9. Aztec Cannibals. Excavations from the small Aztec town of Tecoaqui have revealed some true horrors from the ancient world. According to the evidence, Spanish conquistadors butchered around a dozen women and their children in this small Aztec town. Why did the Spanish conquistadors do such a terrible thing? It was revenge for something that happened a few months earlier, when the inhabitants of the town captured a detachment of Spaniards and ate them. Yeesh. The residents of the town captured a pretty sizable convoy, about 15 male Spaniards, 50 women, 10 children, and a collection of soldiers from Cuba and Africa. There were also about 350 allied indigenous with the Spaniards. In total, around 500 people were captured. This happened in the year 1520. Then, over the space of a few months, each and every person was sacrificed and eaten. Conquistador Hernan Cortes heard about the atrocity and ordered the town destroyed as revenge. 600 years later, archaeologists discovered evidence that the townsfolk knew vengeance was coming, and they got rid of the Spaniards' bones and tried to destroy the evidence. Apparently, they didn't do the best job at this. Excavations found shattered and chopped remains, the ruins of burned temples, decapitated statues, and all the other horrifying remnants of both the cannibalism and the revenge attack, thereby painting a pretty complete view of the story. Number 8. Vampire Skull. The ghoulish remains of an actual vampire from medieval Europe have been discovered in Venice. According to Italian archaeologists, they've exhumed the corpse of a woman from the 16th century who is believed to be a vampire by whoever put her in the ground. She was buried inside a mass grave on the small island of Lazaretto Nuovo, a place which had been used to get rid of victims of the plague. Somebody had shoved a rock in the woman's mouth as a way to prevent her from chewing her way out of the ground and infecting people with the disease. I guess that's one way of doing it. Among all the remains found, she appeared to be the only one showing signs that people really believed she must have been one of the bloodsuckers. It's important to understand that this was back around 1576, when the plague killed 50,000 people in Venice. And at the time, people were not only terrified of catching the deadly disease, everyone was also terrified of vampires. It was believed that some corpses rose from the grave and bit people to infect them with the horrifying disease. Of course, nobody has ever actually risen from the grave in the history of humanity, but the belief still persists in some places to this day. As for the poor vampire woman, nobody knows who she was in life. Considering her skeleton was found with the rock still wedged between her teeth, either it worked to keep her dead or she was never actually a vampire in the first place. What do you think of the story behind this lady with a rock in her mouth? What do you think she did that made people believe she was a vampire? Let us know what you think in the comment section below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 7. The City of Amarna. The city of Tel El Amarna was once a great capital of ancient Egypt. The city was founded by the pharaoh Akhenaten and his queen wife Nefertiti, but it was not around for long. At the time, the pharaoh had usurped the original pantheon of Egyptian gods in favor of a single deity known as Aten. It took only 15 years for the city to be built, populated, and abandoned. When the pharaoh died in 1332 BCE, belief in the god Aten was eradicated, and the old gods came back into the world. It was definitely a strange time in Egyptian history, but recent research has unveiled something horrifying. By digging in the cemeteries in Amarna, researchers found graves of around 6,000 people. They studied human remains from 400 of them and discovered a large majority of the people who had died in the city were mostly children and teenagers. Curiously, they didn't find that many adults or infants. This has suggested that the pharaoh acquired a small army of kids and teens to build his failed city for him. According to the Archaeology News Network, about 90% of the skeletons exhumed so far have been between the ages of 7 and 25, though the vast majority were younger than 15. The suggestion here is that almost all of the city was populated by teenagers, probably forced into labor. It would explain why the city rose and fell in just 15 years. You can't exactly build a society based on nothing but kids. Number 6. Mysterious animal heads. In Bulgaria, a mysterious archaeological site has been found filled with strange rock carvings of animal heads. It's been dubbed the Rock Herd. Nobody knows when the carvings were made or who exactly sculpted them, but they are pretty disturbing. The archaeological site itself consists of a monument decorated on all sides with carvings of animal heads arranged in a circle. Most of the heads are from animals like cattle and goats, though some of them appear to be unknown monsters. Unfortunately, the monument is already crumbling apart. It's extremely old and has been heavily eroded. Some of the animal head sculptures have already broken off the main monument, and those that remain are in pretty rough shape. Nearby is the old city of Sliven, which boasted a lengthy medieval history. However, scientists don't know what connection there is between the animal heads and the old city. Number 5. Ancient cockroach. One of the most terrifying things you could possibly imagine was just discovered, preserved in a piece of amber. The body of a strange, new species of predatory cockroach that lived 100 million years ago was found almost perfectly preserved inside the chunk of fossilized tree resin. It's a small monster, measuring less than an inch long, and scientists say it looks like a weird mixture between a praying mantis and a cockroach. At first, researchers were almost sure the cockroach might have been a mantis. But Dr. Peter Varnsky from the Geological Institute of Bratislava from the Slavic Academy of Sciences took a closer look and revealed something different. After the first look, I knew it was something new. Nothing similar runs on Earth today, he told BBC Earth. In its life, the prehistoric insect would have actually been quite ferocious. It had a triangular head, large eyes to see its victims, a long, intimidating neck for its size, mighty wings, and mouthparts that it used to tear apart unfortunate prey. Where was such a creepy specimen discovered? It was found by the German researcher Ziggy Ellenberger in Myanmar. Scientists don't know everything about the insect just yet, but they are confident it could be an ancient ancestor of modern cockroaches. It was just a lot scarier, with longer limbs and a head like a praying mantis. This is not the kind of cockroach you would want crawling around in your walls today. It was at least twice as scary as the cockroaches still alive, albeit significantly smaller. Number 4. Dancing skeleton. In 2017, in the east of Russia, the mysterious grave of a man who died in the Dark Ages was discovered. The man inside the grave has come to be known as the dancing skeleton. This is because when archaeologists exhumed him, he appeared to be dancing. It wasn't that his bones were jiggling around inside his coffin. Instead, he had been interred on his back with his legs in a bizarre position that made him look frozen in the middle of an epic dance move. His feet were crossed, his knees were open, and it looked like he died trying to pull off some Michael Flatley Lord of the Dance type stuff. What a way to go. But this guy probably wasn't actually dancing straight to his doom and death. According to forensic experts, the reason his legs were discovered in such a weird position is that he was probably tied up when he died. Had he not been tied, his extremities would have straightened after death. Researchers now believe he was shot by an arrow, tied up like a prisoner, then dumped in a grave. Quite different from the original and lighter assumption. Number 3. The warrior god. In Iraq, archaeologists found a cultic area where, 5,000 years ago, the local Mesopotamians practiced animal sacrifices and bizarre rituals, which were dedicated to a mysterious warrior god. The archaeological site is called Girsu, which translates roughly to the sacred city. Archaeologists excavated hundreds of unique artifacts, including ceramics and animal bones, from near a ritual pit. This pit measured over 8 feet or almost 2.5 meters deep. Based on the collected evidence, researchers are confident that the ceramics, cups, and goblets found in the area were used in a religious feast, while the bones found are leftovers of sacrificed animals like sheep and pig. Researchers also found a bronze figurine in the shape of a duck that they believe was made to represent the goddess Nanshi, associated with marshlands and aquatic birds. They also found fragments of artifacts inscribed with the name Ning-Irsu, the warrior god of the city Girsu, who was the farmer's version of a thunder god. You could think of him like the Mesopotamian Thor. Nobody knows if any human sacrifices were made here or what exactly the rituals entailed, but it was probably some pretty freaky stuff. Do you have any ideas? Number 2. Shaman Pouch. Scientists have discovered a shamanic pouch from about 1,000 years ago in Bolivia. Inside the shaman's pouch, which was crafted from fox snout, were traces of a very powerful hallucinogenic drug. But wait, because it wasn't just one drug. Scientists found a variety of hallucinogenic plants that had been blended together to create a compound which would give the shaman a seriously groovy trip. As you may already know, the ancient shamans of South America were basically just on acid all the time, only this was natural acid, chemicals from psychotropic plants found all throughout the Amazon jungle. The pouch was found inside a small cave, likely left behind as part of a human burial. There was more than just one pouch as well. There was an entire bundle found stashed in a leather bag. There were 2 sniffing tablets, pestle and mortar type tools, used to crush plants into a sniffable powder. There was also something called a snuffing tube, which would have been used by the shaman to smoke the hallucinogenic plants. If you thought you had fun in college, just wait until you hear the list of ingredients found inside the pouch. There was cocaine, DMT, and psilocin from magic mushrooms. It was basically an ayahuasca cocktail, but even more potent. Whoa. Number 1. Mummified child. Researchers from Northwestern University have used X-rays to take a closer look at an ancient Egyptian mummy without needing to remove her linen wrappings. The mummy dates back 1900 years. She was only 5 years old when turned into a mummy, and she was found back in 1911 in Hawara, Egypt. Using these special X-ray scanners, researchers found a scarab amulet meant to protect her body as she journeyed into the afterlife, stuck inside of her. The amulet had actually been left inside her body. This was the first time researchers were able to examine an intact mummy without ruining the wrapping. And it could lead to a new wave of scary discoveries as scientists begin looking beyond the molten mummy flesh to see what kinds of treasures are buried literally inside the mummies. If a random little girl had a fancy amulet inside of her, there's no telling what kind of amazing artifacts could be inside more prestigious mummies. After all, scientists hadn't really considered doing surgery on mummies before to look for artifacts, and now they don't have to. They can just scan them. Number 10. The Earth's largest geoglyph. A set of lines have been found in the Thar Desert of India thanks to Google Maps. And apparently, they could just be part of the biggest geoglyph that's ever been discovered. The designs are sprawling, formed out of earth and stone, and unlike anything ever found in the country before. These lines are similar to the ones that have been found in both Peru and Kazakhstan, and yet vastly different while still maintaining an uncanny resemblance. The patterns cover a space of about 51 acres and are carved about 4 inches or 10 centimeters deep into the ground. According to Life Science, you would have to hike for 30 miles or 48 kilometers to trace the lines. The secrets behind the geoglyphs have yet to be unveiled. Nobody's sure why they were made, or even more complex, who they were made by. But there have also been rock burial cairns, memory stones, and other stones carved with the deities Krishna and Ganesha. They have a guess as to how it could have been made, though. Scientists think the glyphs were created using a plow-like device being pulled by a camel. What's truly fascinating is that this is one of the biggest archaeological discoveries in Indian history, and was made by an independent researcher from France who was only checking out satellite pictures of the region using Google Earth. It was a total accident, and now real archaeologists need to find their way to the region to investigate further. Once more is uncovered about these massive geoglyphs, secrets about the ancient world they were created in could be revealed. Number 9. A disturbing ritual. In the abandoned city of Rhyolite, a small ghost town in Nevada located in Death Valley, a Google Earth user discovered something terrifying, and what most people would be shocked by. After clicking the Street View icon, the user was surprised to see what appeared to look like a group of individuals cloaked in sinister white robes. Given how they were just looking for simple directions, they were understandably disturbed to see the figures. The image of the people was creepier than anything else. There were no obvious reasons for the cloaked people to be there. A whole group of them just positioned in a circle, seemingly in the middle of a cultist ritual. However, it was soon uncovered by fellow TikTok users where the discovery was posted that these weren't actually people. The ghoulish group of strangers in robes was part of an art installation created by the Belgian artist Albert Schukalski. The outdoor exhibition in the abandoned town was installed way back in 1984, but nobody really knows it's there just outside the infamous Death Valley. It was made to be a modern representation of the Last Supper of Christ. But if you didn't know that, it would look like some kind of crazy, wacky pagan ritual. Number 8. Crashed UFO. Yet another discovery of something strange was made in the inhospitable wasteland of Death Valley. Users of Google Maps have found what looks to be a UFO crashed in the sand and surrounded by military-style tanks. There was a 340-foot, about 100-meter, crater shaped like a teardrop in the Lone Pine Unified School District of California, and an abandoned boat found near it as well as a crashed plane were discovered, though they may not have been related. The UFO in question almost looks like the Millennium Falcon the way it's shaped. At first glance, it could be mistaken for a lake because of its turquoise coloring. But curious investigators online were quick to point out it resembles the skeleton of a spacecraft. There haven't been any confirmed reports on the ground of what this wreckage really is. The thing is right in the middle of nowhere, so it's not a place most people would go to investigate. And by the time anyone does go out to the desert to look, chances are the mysterious craft will already be gone, perhaps covered up by someone who doesn't want the truth let out. Number 7. A rude message. Somebody wrote a rather nasty message about their neighbor in their backyard. This message was spotted by someone on Google Maps. Nobody knows the exact story of the neighbors. Their houses were spotted somewhere in a suburb of Salt Lake City. The aggressor in this case had mowed an unrepeatable 5-letter word starting with a B into their grass with a crude arrow pointed next door. It stuck out quite a bit on Google Maps because all the other lawns are green, properly mowed and clean. And then in the middle of all of it, in big capital letters, is a pretty hateful slur. The neighbor might not have even known about the word since it could only be seen from the air. But then again, maybe they could see it the whole time through their back window. Either way, this was a neighborly feud that got out of hand, with the whole world now knowing about it. We're just curious what the argument was about. Do you have any ideas on why the neighbors don't get along? Let us know in the comments below. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. Ghost of the Father. In Japan, a man made a heart-wrenching discovery using Google Earth. This story begins 7 years ago when his father passed away. It was hard on the man and his whole family, but life moved on after their loss. Then recently, while looking at his own house on Google Earth, he was shocked to discover the ghostly figure of his father standing at the edge of the driveway and the street. The street view must have been recorded nearly a decade before his father had died. According to what the Japanese man said online after making his discovery, he believes his father was captured by the Google camera while standing outside waiting for his mother to return, something he did often. His father was a quiet but dedicated man, and seeing him waiting on the road for his wife was shocking, especially since he hadn't expected it. In this case, Google Earth has captured the essence of his father, waiting for the one he loved. And the user who posted their discovery hopes Google never updates the image of his home, in hopes to keep the memory of his father alive. Number 5. A pile of skeletons. Google Earth has revealed a haunting pile of bones in a place you would never expect: the radioactive ghost town of Chernobyl. While an online user was taking a nice trip around the Chernobyl exclusion zone, they came across a small collection of bones, as if somebody had been melted in nuclear waste. Because the discovery was made by looking at satellite images, it was impossible to tell whether the bones belonged to a human or an animal. However, the pile of bones had some other interesting items in it too. There was what looked like a hard hat and a gas mask. Could this be the lost pile of bones of someone who died? It's definitely a possibility. When Chernobyl had a massive meltdown in 1986 and became the worst nuclear disaster in the history of humanity, at least 28 people died from acute radiation poisoning. At least those were the official numbers released by the then Soviet Union. Nobody actually knows the extent of physical damage done to humans and how many corpses were buried after the dramatic containment efforts to contain the nuclear outbreak. But in 2005, it was predicted that nearly 5,000 people died due to radiation-related health issues. The skeleton could have been one of the workers or firefighters there on day one, absorbing radiation until he collapsed and was forgotten. And if not, it's still a creepy pile of animal bones left in what many consider to be a nuclear wasteland. Number 4. A forgotten mystery. The ex-resident of a suburban neighborhood in Florida was checking out his old stomping grounds when he came across a potential clue to a mystery dating back 22 years ago. In November of 1997, William Moult went missing. He was 40 years old at the time and was last spotted leaving a local bar just after 11 p.m. that night. But William never returned home. His girlfriend panicked, the police were phoned, and search efforts turned up with nothing. William was even posted on a website for missing people. But no matter how hard everyone looked, William was gone without a trace. Fast forward to today, the ex-resident of the neighborhood saw what appeared to be a sunken car in a pond behind a newly built home. It was hiding just at the edge of the water. He got a hold of the owner of the home, who quickly confirmed that there was definitely a sunken vehicle behind his house. Strange that the owner didn't think much of it before. Thankfully, the local sheriff got involved, the car was hauled out of the pond, and the skeleton of a man was found inside. After experts with the medical examiner's office analyzed the bones, the skeleton was identified as William Moult. He had been slowly decaying inside of his car at the bottom of a man-made pond for 22 years. But just how did this happen? He must have driven into the pond accidentally on his way home that night, right? Unfortunately, the police never released any official information on how William wound up in the pond or why nobody found him or spotted the sunken vehicle for over 20 years. You'd think an entire vehicle would be easy to spot. Number 3, Bigfoot. Bigfoot has been spotted thanks to Google Earth. At least that's what one user is claiming after finding a large, hairy monster near the side of the road while checking out the street view. After sharing the discovery online, it was viewed over 4 million times. But not everyone is convinced. Yes, it looks like Google Earth has finally caught a non-fuzzy picture of Bigfoot. However, it also kind of looks like a guy in a furry suit, which has started to become the most likely theory. The problem here is that people have been known to put on outrageous outfits and chase around Google vehicles when they appear in the neighborhood. So as far as anyone knows, this Bigfoot could really just be a random person who happened to have a Bigfoot costume in his closet, like most normal people do. But really, how likely is that? Someone would have needed to put on the Bigfoot suit awfully quickly and then catch the Google vehicle in time to be recorded. In the street view, the Bigfoot creature can clearly be seen lumbering out of the trees, and it doesn't look like a suit. So, was this a weird coincidence, or did Google Earth reveal the truth behind Bigfoot living closer to suburbia than any of us thought possible? Number 2, Antarctic Monster. An Antarctic monster has been found thawed on the icy continent at the bottom of the world. The creature appears to have been dead for a long time. It's nothing more than a skeleton, and it was found about 50 miles or 80 kilometers from the Arctic coast thanks to Google Earth. Those who came across the strange creature believe it to be some kind of prehistoric beast, but nobody quite knows when it died or what exactly it was when alive. Could it be an icy cousin to the famous Loch Ness monster? The corpse of the thing seems fairly large, estimated to be around 12 feet or 3.5 meters long, though it could have been as big as 20 feet or 6 meters when alive. The big question being asked is, how did it get there? If it is some kind of prehistoric monster that was trapped under the ice, why are there no other creatures in the area? Did it scare them off? All that's been found is the single skeletal monster in the middle of nowhere. Some have said it's just the body of a dead seal, nothing that mysterious, but nobody knows for sure. It could be the rotten corpse of an unknown Antarctic monster. But we don't really know until researchers are able to dig it up from its icy grave and analyze it. Number 1, the Penis Church. Residents living in the United Kingdom are worried that the value of their homes could plummet after a recent discovery made on Google Earth made their stomachs drop. One resident was quoted saying, "We've become a laughingstock." But what could possibly terrify the neighborhood so profoundly? Well, it seems their neighborhood has been crafted in the shape of a penis. Yes, a penis. The residents live in a cul-de-sac, no pun intended, that, when viewed from above, literally looks like the male private area. Although they shouldn't worry about property values, if anything, thanks to the comedic nature of the internet, they might just increase with this discovery instead. But theirs isn't the only penis-shaped creation discovered on Google Earth. Previously, users of the app noticed the Christian Science Church in Dixon, Illinois, looks a lot like a man's genitals, at least from above it does. The roof of the church looks identical to a wiener, but at least the church had some humor about it. They posted on their Facebook feed, "Giant fig leaf coming soon," as the church officer told local news that they didn't design the church to be seen from above. Well, neither had the neighborhood in the UK. But thanks to Google Maps, Both have been outed as buildings that look like male genitalia. Hopefully, going forward, designers will start thinking about what their buildings look like from all angles before construction even starts. Thanks for watching. What's the strangest thing you've ever seen on Google Earth? Have you made any disturbing or funny discoveries? Let me know about it in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for all the best videos. See you next time. Bye-bye.